month ago, I had an experience that was simultaneously one of the best moments in my career and one of the most jolting moments of my life. Good news had been released about a reduction in childhood obesity rates in America in young children. And as someone who's dedicated her career to that task, I was thrilled. And throughout the day, I received calls from the media asking for a comment or an appearance. And that afternoon, I spoke on public radio, and that evening, I went live on PBS NewsHour. And the interview went well, and I was thrilled. And on my way back to the train station in the darkness, I took out my iPhone to check in on emails, and boom. One after the other, emails were coming in with subject lines like neck swelling, thyroid enlargement, your appearance tonight. And I felt numb. So I quickly opened them, and they were surgeons, endocrinologists, and concerned citizens from around the country who had just seen me on TV and were all concerned about my health. So as my family will attest, I will never win the Calm in the Face of Danger award. So I rushed to the train station, into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and there it was, a large lump on the right side of my neck. And I couldn't believe that I hadn't seen it before. How long had it been there? And what was it? And I quickly started thinking about my kids and my husband and everything I still wanted to do with my career. And I felt really scared. So let me fast forward and tell you that everything's okay. I went to my doctor and a specialist and found out that it was benign and that with proper follow-up, all would be well. But as I reflected back on those couple of days when I was in the period of the unknown, I realized that something remarkable had happened. Over a dozen total strangers from across the country had seen something that they knew wasn't right and had taken the time in that moment to reach out and connect with me and tell me that I needed to get help. And despite the fact that I've spent my entire career identifying and empowering champions, I had never felt the power so personally. Which brings me to the community of Somerville, a place that I moved to almost 25 years ago that looked nothing like it does today. There were no farmers markets, no bike lanes. There wasn't an amazing rock gym where people could come together and congregate, get physical activity, and exchange ideas. And I'm proud of the fact that I played a part in that progress. Over a decade ago, I conducted a major experiment right here in the community of Somerville to reduce childhood obesity rates. And we brought evidence-based strategies that we knew would reduce children's body weights and prevent obesity to this community. And we put those strategies into the hands of teachers, city leaders, parents. And one of the first champions I met was the mayor of Somerville, Joe. And when I walked in his office over a decade ago and said to him, "Would you like to transform Somerville?" he looked at me with an expression that was a little bit frightened and a little bit excited. And he listened to me for a couple more minutes, and then he said, "I'm in." And he continued to be in throughout that 3-year study and over the next decade, showing up everywhere. He went into the school cafeterias and made healthy foods and served them to the kids. He ran the first Shape Up Somerville road race with his toddler in tow. And he gathered leaders and citizens from throughout the community to brainstorm ways to make Somerville more bikeable and more walkable, and to implement policies to make sure that that happened. And when the results of that study became public, he was asked by the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, to come to the White House and help her announce her national campaign to reduce childhood obesity. And so you might be thinking, I could never be a champion like that. I don't lead a large group. I'm not the mayor of a city. I don't have that much power. But let me assure you, there were champions at every level throughout Somerville. Some highly visible, like Joe, and some working behind the scenes quietly, like Shirley. I met Shirley years after Shape Up Somerville ended in the basement of a housing development here in Somerville. And I was there doing a focus group with new immigrants so I could understand their lives and help prevent obesity. And she sat in a Shape Up Somerville t-shirt and told a dramatic story in Haitian Creole. And I had no idea what she was saying. And I quickly said to the translator, "What did she just say?" And he said, "She just told me a story about moving to the United States 7 years ago and gaining 50 pounds. And then she got a job in a cafeteria in the Somerville Public Schools. And there was a study underway called Shape Up Somerville. And she started making healthy foods and serving them to the kids. She saw how excited they were. She changed her own diet, and she started a walking group with the other women who worked in the cafeteria. And during that study, she lost those 50 pounds. So as a result of this massive experiment that included the whole community of Somerville, we reduced the rates of childhood obesity by 30%. And because I was the principal investigator, I got calls from communities across the country saying, "Can you bring Somerville to us?" And so I began. And over the next 3 years, we did studies and dissemination projects and outreach, and we got to 18 communities, coast to coast, from the Mississippi River Delta to the Central Valley, with the Somerville model. And we were reaching 200,000 children. And when I did the calculation, I realized we were reaching 0.25% of children in America. That wasn't nearly enough. And it was right around that time that Peter walked into my office, a business leader who knew how to get things done, who knew how to scale things up. In fact, he told me his first job out of business school was to get Cool Whip into every household in America. And being someone who grew up with a tub of Cool Whip in her refrigerator, I knew that he could scale things up. So together, with the innovation of business and the science that grew right out of Somerville, we started Child Obesity 180, and we are bringing the same strategies to children across America. And we're doing it through champions. In 1992, Kara, a special ed teacher in Southern California, recognized that the kids in her class weren't getting enough physical activity. They weren't paying attention and they were gaining weight. So she challenged those kids to walk, run, or wheel 100 miles throughout the school year. And that's a pretty cool goal if you're 6 or 7 or 8. And those kids met that goal. In fact, many of them exceeded that goal. And she knew she had something special. So she worked over the next 12 years to bring the 100-Mile Club to 35 schools in Southern California. And with her, we've brought that program to over 800 schools in all 50 states. And next year, we're going to 10,000 schools. I ate breakfast in Compton, California, a little over a year ago. And when I arrived at the elementary school, it was still dark, and I watched children rolling coolers throughout the hallways with bananas and granola bars and low-fat milk, bringing breakfast to their classrooms. And I walked through the school and visited classroom by classroom. And I stopped in a 3rd grade classroom, and I met Larry, the teacher, who said, "Every day, I pull up a chair, I spread out a napkin, and I eat breakfast with the kids in my classroom. And I teach them manners, and we talk about their lives, and I know this might be the only family meal that they have that day." This is the type of program we're bringing to children across America. This is the type of program that started right here in Somerville. So, what do all these people have in common? On the surface, nothing. An immigrant, a mayor, a business leader, a school teacher, an endocrinologist. In fact, none of them woke up one morning and said, "Today, I'm going to become a champion." But each of them seized a moment a moment presented to them to do something different, to do something bigger. And they took action and they made change. And one moment turned into 2, into 3, turned into days, turned into weeks. And finally, they were part of a much larger movement. So just like those people who emailed me when they saw something that wasn't right, when they knew change had to happen, we all need to seize the moment. So when it's your moment, will you see it? Will you seize it? Will you become a champion? Thank you.